All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here and we can start the show. We got the wheels spinning here. Boom, boom. All right, that was quick, nice and easy. Welcome in, welcome in. We are a little late today. It's my fault. Kid is apoplectic. Is that the word? I don't know, Eric. You can help me here. You'll be my thesaurus. But I think he has an ear infection, so he's not. He's normal, 1-year-old cutting teeth. Yeah, he can be a little fussy sometimes, but exceedingly so. So I'm in the pits right now. But how are you doing? You said you're a little tired. What's a pick me up? Are we getting you on coffee yet? I think eventually it's going to have to happen.
Protein shakes.
Protein shakes.
Protein morning energy thing, I guess, is what it is.
Okay.
But I'm doing good. Lacking sleep between yesterday. You're dealing with the sick kiddo. I'm dealing with the sick kiddo. She woke me up at 2:00 in the morning yesterday, vomiting, which is never fun.
No.
And so yeah, I'm dealing with that and trying to get some sleep and rest in when I can. But excited to be here. Excited to talk about some favorite free agents. And I got to ask, just because I see this comment here, Jason Bonnie was making a joke about me still eating our pancakes for being late. But are you a pancake guy or a waffle guy more?
This might be weird OCD kind of kicking in here. I like both, but I really hate just giant globs of uneven butter in a waffle. So I like a pancake because I can spread it evenly, where it's just like hunks of butter and something. I don't want to just eat butter. But above both of them, without a doubt, French toast.
French toast, yes.
French toast is S tier comparatively, and even above French toast, biscuits and gravy.
No, you lost me on
I
that.
love biscuits and gravy.
You lost me on that one. But French toast, waffles, pancakes, that's my proper order.
Okay. Yeah. I love a good, it depends on how good the biscuit is too. Like if you just have a generic biscuit, out of freezer or something, fresh biscuits and gravy. Oh my God. So good. But I appreciate everybody coming in here. We got David Youngkin. I would not be surprised the Broncos use free agent for defense and use the draft to build the offense. That seems to be the general consensus right now. It also has a lot to do with the class available. But in terms of the draft, but we'll see. Right. The board falls the way it falls. And Denver, I don't think they can completely negate the offense. I think they're going to have to bring in a wide receiver, a tight end, or a running back because you're not going to be able to fill. You don't have 8 top 100 picks. You don't have 8 top 120 picks. You're not going to be able to fill every spot. So they're going to have to sign somebody to help raise the floor of the room a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things of with how long tight ends can take to transition. I think you got to go sign somebody. There's not a great free agent group, but there's some guys out there that can come in and help raise the floor a little bit. And that way it also helps you if Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, they're not there at 20, you don't get the guy that you want. Well, if you don't sign somebody, you don't have that insurance. I'm a firm believer of teams not wanting to go into the draft with any, major obvious needs. And for the most part, George Payton and Sean Payton, even when he was with the Saints, have kind of followed that outside of quarterback. But so I think you got to sign somebody there. And the same thing with running back, just somebody, just in case you don't get that top guy, just in case you don't get the, top 2 or 3 guys that you're really looking for. You just have that veteran presence on it. And like tight end, it's not the best running back free agent group unless you want to spend on a couple of the top guys or take some risks. And when we get into the conversation more, there's one guy I would definitely be taking a risk on. But I think the big money that's going to be spent on the defensive side. I think that'd be a better way of putting it. Is the big money is going to be spent on the defense. Some of those, value bin free signings are going to happen on the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. I will say, keep an eye out on free agency is weird because we have these lists and whatnot, and it feels like half the top 25 are resigned by their own teams or tagged. And then you have a whole nother crop of guys that become available that are cut. Right now, tight end group is horrible. It sounds like Kyle Pitts could be on the move. I mean, not that, he's kind of risky, but he could be on the move. Mark Andrews sounds like he could be on the move in Baltimore. Dalton Schultz could be out in Houston. I mean, there's 3 guys that might be better than any of the ones in the top of the class right now. So there's going to be a lot of movement, of course. And then my personal coming into the offseason, the guy I wanted more than anybody to sign on the offensive side, going to be expensive, but I just love him because he's such a useful player, and that's Chris Godwin. But now that T. Higgins is getting tagged, it sounds like he's going to be back in Tampa Bay anyway on a non-tag contract. But I think he would be just a perfect fit for what this team needs, how much they want to run the screen game and whatnot. He does everything for your offense. Just a a hard work, dirty work player, which I really appreciate. You need to have those selfless players at those diva positions. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how it fluctuates as we get closer here. But Chris Godwin, he's definitely not an underdog, so to speak, for signing this offseason. He's a premium guy. He's considered one of the top 10 in the entire league, assuming he hits free agency.
Yeah, and speaking of underdogs, this basketball season, when your favorite star scores a bucket, we're going to give you an alley-oop opportunity to win money from watching sports with Underdog. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play now in your state. Do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? Well, you can with Underdog.
To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, such as points, assists, rebounds, and much more. Underdog's got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your hoops knowledge.
So download the Underdog app and sign up now using promo code MHuddle to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code MHuddle. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon your first deposit.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Conservative play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncbgambling.org. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. So moving along here, I want to say hello to more people coming in here as the chat's going. Appreciate everyone. We got Gatorade Gaming says, morning, Nick and Eric. What's good, Broncos country? We got our guy Jason Bonney in the house. Good to see you. We got Pearl. Great to see Pearl as well. Killing it here. And we also got Roy coming in. Says, good morning, Nick and Eric. Got the Lion Coffee brewing? Abso-frickin-lutely, Roy. Thank you so much. Gatorade's with me on Pancake. David says neither. Man, I don't know what's going on with the pancake conversation here on that front. We also got our guy. There we go. Michael Ronquillo coming in with always the big support over on the Facebook side of things. If you guys can't be like Mike, I don't know if you remember that movie back in the day. I want to be like Mike. But if you guys can't be like Mike, make sure you click the thumbs up. Not everybody's in a position to financially contribute and support like Michael Ronquillo always does. Obviously, we prefer that and we adore you for that, Michael. But if you can't do that, click the thumbs up on the ways in. It helps us so much. And as we're keeping it going. Yeah, Nick sounds like an auctioneer with that ad. I got the fast pace down there. I listen to all my podcasts on 2 times speed. I'm a maniac. But thank you so much, Michael. Hope you're doing well. And really, really do appreciate all of the support. We also, talking about support, one of our OGs, Denver Luke, $1.99 super sticker. I cannot see what the super sticker is. I'm just going to believe it's a picture of me on top of a mountain. Because why not, right? Let's make it about me. But appreciate you so much, Denver Luke, coming in with the support. Hope you're doing well. Good morning to you. Good morning. Over on Facebook, we got Jeff coming in and says, the Broncos need to give Drew Sanders a chance if they're playing him at middle linebacker. We need a legit wide receiver. Sutton drops too many balls. Mims and Franklin could be something special, but we need a true number one. Need a running back and a tight end. On the defensive side, need linebacker, safety, and defensive line. I think Debo would be a good fit. I am also a lot here, Jeff. Appreciate the information here. As far as giving Sanders a chance, I think you have an on-ramp for Sanders naturally on this team right now. So you still have 2 years of control of Sanders. Lord knows where he's going to play. It sounds like it's going to be linebacker now based on Alex Singleton's Super Bowl interview, but it was edge a year ago. I'm kind of worried about, him being in no man's land. But the obvious on-ramp for him as far as playing time is you're going to pay a linebacker this offseason. Period. Stop. It's going to happen. So that puts Sanders in that second string of linebackers. But Alex Singleton only has 1 year left. He's going to be 31 years old. He's coming off an ACL injury. Now, I'm not saying that the Broncos are going to outright release him. Maybe they will, but I don't think they do in the end. But if he shows enough, you have an option there on that for 2026 at linebacker. But I don't think you can go into this season with him being your no doubt unobstructed starter. That's just too risky. Linebackers who have processing issues, the spine of the defense, it's just, you got to, in the very least, make sure you're reading things right and being in the right place. And right now, I don't trust Sanders to do that.
Yeah, I'm with you, but it was a little eye-opening to start hearing Alex Singleton's name as a cap casualty option for the Broncos. I mean, it makes sense with his age, his contract. They can get out of it with hardly any dead money this year. But, I mean, they're already talking about spending big at the position and how much, and all these reports about how much they want and need to upgrade the room. doesn't make sense for them to cut him unless they really like what they were seeing in Drew Sanders to end out the season, working in practice, if they like his development there, and Lavelle Bailey. That's the only way it makes sense. So I'm with you that you can't run with either of them as a starter, but maybe there's a scenario where they go out, they spend big on one linebacker, and they're comfortable enough to part ways with Alex Singleton, and then they turn to Drew Sanders and Lavelle Bailey to compete for that other starting spot.
Personally, I think that's a little too risky for me, given linebackers. A great linebacker you notice, but good linebackers sometimes you don't notice. It's crazy. I know it says like this eye-popping stats position, but like if they're doing like the little, like I come to Josie Jewell. He's a fine linebacker. Does a lot of the little things right. He's in the race. And then you have guys who are really toolsy, can chase down guys, the blitz, the closing speed, but they're constantly looking in the wrong place. Yep. Their hips are turned the wrong direction, and they're getting gashed because they're not in the right place in coverage or in run defense. I think of Kenneth Murray, really good athlete out of Oklahoma. Dude just did not know where he was going half the time. So I think it's a little risky to do that. Now, if Denver was in a transition season and we're in like we just got to find out what we have here, that's one thing. I don't think that's this team. Denver's 14th in early Super Bowl odds or something like that. And you have a window right now with Bo Nix on his rookie contract. You also, I hate to say it, but you also have a window with Patrick Surtain right now, right? With him being elite cornerback. I mean, what do you have right now? I mean, assuming he stays healthy, 3-4 years, right? Because the cornerback dip really hits hard for most of those guys. So again, you're in your window right now. I don't think you want to be messing around with a not sure thing, given the how much a bad linebacker can totally tank a defense.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm in full agreement there. Unless their whole goal is they're going to spend big, and then they're confident that they can land one of these top linebackers in the first or second round. Yeah. Like that's the only way that it makes sense. Not rolling with Sanders and giving them a chance. But even then, there's still plenty of risk because, despite me being more down on Alex Singleton than a lot of Broncos fans, he is still more than serviceable. He's still one of those slightly above average starters that you can have, especially with his play against the run, which last year was an issue from the linebackers pretty consistently, especially to close out the season. So he can still help and contribute. You're just going to lose a little bit in coverage. But if you go out and you sign that guy, that everyone's expecting a big signing here, Zach Bond, Nick Bolton, well, maybe they're looking at that big signing in free agency to help their coverage ability from the linebacker position. But yeah, it's just too much of a risk for me to part ways with Alex Singleton. I get why that there's the conversation, but I think it makes more sense to just stick with him for the year and then continue trying to develop Drew Sanders, Lavelle Bailey, and maybe somebody that you end up with the draft.
Yeah. And the linebacker spot, I think, is kind of interesting for the Broncos because it's very much a watch what I do, not what I say scenario with them. So you have like this offseason already, you have Sean Payton mentioned the Joker 2 different times. Running back, tight end are obviously big areas of a need for this roster. But then, I mean, even dating back to last year before the season even started, they were not happy with their linebacker room. Yep. You had before the season reports that they were trying to trade for a guy, for Mike Kliss, really looking to add another linebacker because the only guy they trusted really was Alex Singleton. You have Alex Singleton go down and they bring in Cunningham and Quan Alexander. You have reports. The first time I heard of this was after the season, but prior to that Saints game, the Broncos were this close to benching Cody Barton. They were not happy with what they were seeing there from him. Then he had the big game with the, multiple plays on the ball, and he's an athletic guy. Yeah, he's okay in coverage. It's a lot of leak yardage and tackling and coming downhill, but they were not happy with Cody Barton. I know that some Broncos Twitter liked him, and they did not seem happy with him. And then also you have them firing their linebackers coach this offseason as well. So that's a room that, they a lot of pointing and, stomping and whatnot at the running back and tight end spot, rightfully so. But linebacker is right there with them, and it's much more action-wise points to them being upset with linebacker than any other spot on the roster, outside of maybe running back just because of the constant rotation at the position. But that's linebacker's got to be up there. And as far as free agency goes, again, that's the one spot I'm with you. We've kind of talked about it on here. We danced around it. That's the one spot I fully expect the Broncos to make their most substantial. Well, I think there's a chance maybe a safety is their most substantial signing, Eric, as far as dollars go, just because there's guys available there. And maybe they say, like, we really like this linebacker for, like, let's say Ernest Jones injuries clear and you get him for much less than a Javon Holland or something like that, then maybe the bigger splashes at safety. But the one I expect the most for sure is linebacker this cycle. And again, it makes sense when you look at the roster and free agency.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of good guys out there. I mean, obviously the big one is Zach Bond. He's a guy that Sean Payton traded up for to draft when he was with the New Orleans Saints. He ended up having his breakout year with the Eagles, where he was moved from working as an edge to linebacker. And he's just one of those guys that he can do everything quite well. He fits in extremely well with what Vance Joseph wants to do. He can blitz, he can drop back in coverage. He had that big play in the Super Bowl with the interception. He defends the run quite well between the tackles and outside the tackles. Ernest Jones, he's another guy who he was viewed as one of the rising stars at linebacker before some injuries hit. Nick Bolton, he's another highly rated one. You have EJ Speed, who he plays the game quite well. He's not, on that top level, but he's probably in that second, maybe third tier. Robert Spillane, there's been some linking between him going to the Broncos from the Raiders. I'm not a big fan of him. He's very much a downhill run defending type and probably offers up even less in coverage than Alex Singleton does. But there are plenty of options to upgrade the room. And some of these options are guys that they may not have to spend super big on, like, as you said, Ernest Jones with those injuries and that history that he has. I mean, he just got traded twice in just a few months this last season. And so it's just one of those things where they're going to upgrade the room, but they have the options, so they don't have to spend big. I think they just want to spend big.
And again, it makes sense. The Broncos are in such a good team building situation now. It'd be nice if they had like a true, like, young superstar number one wide receiver, maybe, that no doubt all pro edge, these like really big splash move the needle pieces. But like 4 of your offensive line positions are set. You got quarterback set. You got a superstar cornerback. You got arguably 1 or 2 defensive pass rushers that are, plus players. So really you still want stars, right? Like at the end of the day, like we talk about position of value or not, like there's not a position of value when it comes to like all pro star players. But a lot of the needs are more so, these filler, these secondary, ornamental, tertiary positions. And because of that, Denver doesn't have to go out and break the bank for the 30th best edge rusher or like the pay top 3 money for the 20th best cornerback. You can go out there and you can get a little bit better return on investment with your safeties, with your linebackers. Maybe not tight end or running back this cycle, but I mean, because they're not viewed very high and also tight end and running back are very good in the draft, maybe you can still get value. Even you're picking the top guys, but like the top guys aren't going to go for very much this round. So do want to say hello to Kenneth Booker. He says, Chance Genty 20, tight end second, Travion Henderson in third. I don't think you're going to get Henderson in the third. Daniel Jeremiah mocked him to the Vikings at 24 after Amari and Hampton at 22. So there was 3 right there. So pretty interesting. We got Peter Middleton says, morning, Nick and Eric. Hi from Singapore across the pond. Appreciate you. I'm not sure what micro machines are, but hopefully that's not a insult on my manhood there. Nothing micro over here. We're big in Iowa. No, we grow them tall. All right. Benjamin Flores, what's up? Good morning, men. Go Broncos. Great to see you. Appreciate you. Shiloh also always coming in. Shiloh's one of my favorites. Always appreciate the dog show coming in here. Oh, they're toys. Even worse, Chad. No, I'm just kidding. I don't remember the micro machines. But as much as the team, as the actual season is fun, this time of the year is always full of what ifs. Can't wait to see what the team does. Yeah, this time of year, it's all the team building philosophy and draft evaluation stuff. That is a lot of fun. Colston Loveland is a fine pick at 20. I am so tired of the monotonous. One thing also, I was thinking about it yesterday, like, why don't I like Colston Loveland at 20 more? It's because he's never picked before 20, right? Also, so it's like, oh, he's such a good pick here for the Broncos at 20. If he's so good, why doesn't anybody ever take him before pick 20? It's like one of those things. Like, he's not slipping. 20 seems to be his relative ceiling. Now we'll see how he tests. That could change after the combine and whatnot. But that always kind of, it's just boring, right? It's fun to think about the hypotheticals. I'm bored by it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm also starting to, we've talked about this privately. I'm starting to kind of fall off on Colston Loveland a little bit. I still think he's a fine tight end. I think he's getting pushed up a little bit because his class isn't super strong. And with how things stand right now, there is a good possibility here in just a little over a week when we get to the combine that he may not be my tight end number 2. It's just I mean, you brought it up, that yards after the catch ability and how, that you can see that translate to the NFL and success in the NFL. And obviously you evaluate each player individually. It's not a collective. If it was, it would be a lot easier if you could just say, oh, this guy can't make plays after the catch. Well, he's not going to succeed in the NFL. Doesn't always work that way. But there's other aspects to his game that I've really fallen off on as well. And it doesn't help that there's another guy who the more I watch of him, the more I like about him. So we'll see how it's going, but I'm starting to fall off on Loveland a little bit. And but it is kind of monotonous, oh, I want to go read this mock draft that just published, and you get down to pick 20 and it's Colson Loveland. And then the next day it's Colson Loveland. And then the next day it's Colson Loveland. Very monotonous, very boring, especially for, you and I, we like to do mocks. I like to do it because I like to present different scenarios. I like to get the information out about the players. And I know it's a little bit different when you get guys with like Daniel Jeremiah and all these, with the NFL.com analysts and ESPN, where they're trying to be somewhat predictive. But I like to see the different scenarios and how they can play out and all that. And same player over and over again doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't. You know what does it, though? Always for me. Mark Schrader coming in with 2 coffees. See, Eric, I can't drink both of these here. We got to get you on that front. But I appreciate you, Mark, with the support over on Facebook. We also got our guy, Duke Rose, with the fire glasses emoji guy there. Says, what's up, fellows? If you had to draft 2 defense players in the draft, what positions would you like to pick? Without a doubt, one of I'm gonna cheat here. I'm gonna really cheat here. And this is me being, I'm so smart. I'm taking 2 defensive linemen in this one, but they're going to be playing 2 different spots. You're going to take a 0 or 1, and you're also going to take a 4i/5. So the defensive line is set to turn over completely. I was also thinking maybe linebacker also, but with how good this defensive line class and the fact that all of Denver's defensive linemen are set to leave here in 1 or 2 seasons, you're not going to bring them all back. You're not going to have a defensive line full of third contract players. That's just asking for trouble. So I'm saying 2 defensive linemen, a nose tackle, and a 3-4 defensive end.
See, you and I, we talked too much because as soon as I saw this question, I was like, I'm doing 2 defensive linemen. I'm going to go get that guy who can cut into Zach Allen's snap count a little bit, replace one of them, that 4i/5 technique guy, somebody like Walter Nolan, who I had in my recent mock draft, or Darius Alexander, who I believe we took on our mock draft on Monday.
We did.
Somebody like that. And then, Yaya Black out of Iowa, or Cameron Jackson out of Florida. One of these big nose tackle types that you can 2-gap with them and help out that inside of it, of the defensive line, especially against the run, especially after watching what happened against Buffalo. Now, DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach were terrible, but there was this domino effect. If you can have somebody who can 2-gap and really hold up in the middle of the line, it trickles down to the guys on the edges. It trickles down to your other defensive linemen, those 4Is, that's where Denver really struggled. And it can also help the linebackers, where Denver really struggled against Buffalo. So it just has this domino effect of improving with a consistent, reliable run defender in the middle. Just helps everybody. So I would do that. I would go 2 defensive linemen, just 2 different roles on the defensive line.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Duke. We got Shiloh also coming in. Says, following off on Loveland, he and Helm are my favorites. Loveland's a fine pick at 20, and I want to see how he tests because that's a really important indicator. He's also extremely young for the position. And I know that Sean Payton is going to want to play a lot of heavy personnel, 12, 21. My question about Loveland, it's twofold. And again, at 20, again, he's a fine pick. I don't have a problem with it. It's just I wish that we didn't see the same thing presented over and over and over again. But is Loveland truly a dominant enough inline player as a Y that he changes the math up front? Like, are teams going to just play him with a defensive back, right? Are you going to get Penny if he's in line at 11 or a nickel if he's playing out in the big slot role? And how much better then is he actually as a receiver compared to, Ted McMillan, A.O. Manor, Jack Betch, those guys who are actually wide receivers. I mean, we kind of saw Sean McVay kind of lead the front on this. He's like, wait a second, why would I play a tight end who can't block and change the math from the opposing defense as far as the personnel they match with when I can play Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua, like an actual wide receiver who does all the same dirty work blocking stuff in space, but is 10 times a receiver. And I'm not saying that Loveland, I think Loveland can function fine as your Y. I think he can function fine there, but it's not like Warren or, the other guys in the league who are actually really good at that do change the math, like Goddard, Kraft, so to speak, Kittle, of course, as well. These like true guys who are good in line. You have to be such a good pass catcher that you are evaluated against the wide receivers if you're not changing the math. Brock Bowers does that. Dalton Kincaid doesn't do that. That's your first round guy who was just recently taken there. That looks like a bad pick by Buffalo because they're just matching him with defensive backs. He's not beating defensive backs, right? They're playing Shakir, the wide receiver, who blocks instead of him on a lot of reps, and he's better. So that's my concern with the position, just philosophically. Not that I think Loveland still has potential there, only 20 years old, 21 years old. And then it's on top of the stuff with the yak. I'll have to go back and watch. You can dismiss 2024 with the bad quarterback stuff. He also had bad yak, broken tackle stuff in 2024. Is that because they didn't have other good weapons around him? Is that because of the depth of target? I'm going to have to go back and really dig into that if I have the time. But there's questions with Loveland for me.
Yeah, and we saw Daniel Jeremiah. He trying to make this comparison to Travis Kelce a little bit with him, not directly, but talking about those prototypes you're looking for: Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce. Tyler Warren is your Rob Gronkowski type this year, and then Colson Loveland was his Travis Kelce this year. And while I get where he's coming from with that, I don't see it the same way. Just because Travis Kelce, he wasn't the best blocker, but he was somewhat serviceable. I'll never forget Von Miller just tossing him aside multiple times, but he was a guy who would get in the way, and I don't see that with Loveland. Part of what I'm seeing on tape, the more I watch him, was more issues as a blocker. I thought that there was a little bit more to work with the first couple games I saw. Then as I started watching more, I was seeing it less and less. I was seeing more of these technical hiccups or technical deficiencies in his play that can be hard to correct when you get to the NFL. And when you know some of the coaches that he worked with there at Michigan, to see these technical deficiencies, it leads to concerns about his ability to improve it. That's actually the biggest reason why I'm falling off on him. And then, Travis Kelce, elite receiver type, can make those plays after the catch, can make people miss a little bit. And that's one of the big things that you and I we have with Colson Loveland. So I get it. I get why he's being pushed there to the Broncos at 20. I'm just not for it. If it happens, I'd be fine, I guess. But it's one of those ones where it's like, if you could trade down, I'd rather trade down. But it takes two to trade down, two to tango, as they say. And then to go back to Shiloh's comment about Gunnar Helm, Shiloh, it's going to be interesting because I'm also not a big fan of Gunnar Helm. So
I think Gunnar Helm's after the catchability and frame project him as somebody who can develop still. This is his first year really getting those reps. He had the highest rate of inline blocks for Texas or for any college tight end this season. And there's just like a fluidity in his movement skills that I can't imagine him not being a serviceable, solid tight end 2 at worst in the league. He's going to have to work, but we're talking about somebody who, pick 70 through 90, I think, for Gunnar Helm. That's fine for me. And talking back to Loveland's profile, again, we're supposed to talk free agents here. We need to talk a little safeties. But his profile reminds me a lot of Trey McBride, a lot of Sam Laporta, guys whose profile historically, come about pick 35 to 50 range, not 20. Yeah. Now, granted, that maybe that's this class and you go get your guy and all is well that ends well. But again, I just don't think I don't have a problem with it. It's just it's not a slam dunk that the mock draft seem to be conveying right now. So we'll see what happens there. So moving forward here, I do want to get a hello to some more stars coming in. Keith Brugman says, honestly, go get Mike Gesicki and double up in the draft. They might do that. Gesicki's an option. Hooper's an option. We mentioned a bunch of tight ends that might become available here. That's the one thing about free agency. I said it to start the show. There's going to be so many guys that we didn't even consider before that all of a sudden are available that Denver can go get. So we want to watch for that, of course. Moving it forward here, though, thank you so much for the super chat, Keith. Gesicki'd be an interesting – he's kind of another barometer guy, right, where it's like he's essentially a wide receiver. He's a big body wide receiver. He's not going to get paid huge because he doesn't change the math. But if you want to play those matchup games, that makes some sense. Alan Lazard is essentially a move tight end, right, for that body type. Little Jordan Humphrey, essentially a move tight end for that body type. But moving forward here, top free agents. We already talked about the linebackers. Do you have one of choice? I think my choice would be Nick Bolton, just because I think he raises the floor so much. Like, is he going to be? Does he have the ceiling of Dre Greenlaw? No. Does he have the big splash play movability of Zach Bond? No. I just feel like he's so safe, and he's only 24 years old. That's my guy.
Yeah, I want to go back to the trenches because I'm a trench guy. Offensive, defensive line. It's where I love to spend most of my time with watching players and everything. I'll go back and even if I haven't, done evaluating the tape on some of these prospects, I'll go back and watch more. I am absolutely in love with the idea of Poona Ford or Adam Butler. Taking defensive linemen from two of our rivals. Adam Butler had a really good year this year that went largely unnoticed because he played on the Raiders. He did a lot as a pass rusher, which you haven't really seen before, and he's such a strong, reliable run defender. And then Poona Ford is one of the better run defenders in the NFL on the defensive line. He can play 0 to 3 technique. Adam Butler is pretty much the same, which that fills that void that you're losing with DJ Jones. It's, again, targeting a specific role that you want. And either one of those guys, I would be pretty ecstatic for the Broncos to pick up.
Yeah. I want to throw out somebody as well. I'm really interested in maybe getting ahead on some guys, right? So the two that you mentioned there, I think will be third contract players, right? So they're second, I think third, definitely third for Poona Ford, maybe even fourth. He's small fire hydrant coming out of Texas. I remember him. Some good years in Seattle. I like him a lot. He had a heck of a year for the Chargers. Butler had a great year as well, playing next to Christian Wilkins before he suffered that season-ending injury. I mean, the Raiders' defense is actually better than I thought of. It's just the total lack of running back and horrible quarterback play and weapons for them. But we'll see what happens. They're an interesting team, no doubt. One I wanted to throw out for you that I liked in college, so there's definitely some bias, I guess, baked in there. Didn't work out as first team, but I thought this last year really started to come on. Bobby Brown. From Texas A&M, drafted by the Cowboys, big body, former high recruit, goes to the Rams this season. Pretty good. I mean, I thought he flashed a lot for them. I think you got a chance to maybe a 2-year contract for an ascending player, somebody that is, you're investing now because I think the dividends are coming down the line. So do you have any thoughts on, I think Bobby Brown, the third out there? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one of those guys that he's not quite, at that level of Adam Butler or Poona Ford as a run defender, but that's one of the areas I think he could be, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's where he showed the most improvement going into this year. Doesn't offer much as a pass rusher. Didn't show it this year. I didn't think when I watched over him. But as you said, he's one of those guys, you give a 2-3 year deal to an ascending player, similar to it was a lot more of an expensive contract, but that's kind of what the viewpoint they took with Zach Allen. They viewed him as an ascending player. They went out, signed him to a 3-year deal. At the time, they paid a little bit more for him than what people thought he would get on the open market. But it turned out to be the right move because he still exceeded that contract value and his the return of investment on it. So yeah, Bobby Brown, I mean, if he's one of those guys that you want to sit there and wait and sign for probably a cheaper deal than what Poona Ford, who's, I believe his market estimate is about $6 to $7 million, and Adam Butler's right in that same range. Bobby Brown is probably a guy you could probably get for 3 to 4, maybe $5 million on average per year basis for that targeted need that I think that the Broncos, again, need to be targeting.
Yeah, don't look up Bobby Brown age on Facebook because I guess there's a American singer, songwriter, rapper, and dancer named Bobby Brown, 56. So don't look that one up. Poona Ford's going to be 30, though. But moving forward, the other spot that makes a lot of sense for the Broncos is, of course, safety. There's a lot of good safety options here. Javon Holland is obviously the crown jewel. I will say, maybe it's just, again, me being somewhat a Vic Fangio pacifist, or just not pacifist, but a sympathizer. That's a heck of a coach. I really like especially as a defensive coordinator, maybe not a head coach, but the mentality that he brings. And then the divorce that happened in Miami and how outspoken Javon Holland was with that divorce. He posted that Instagram reel or TikTok of him kicking rocks, once Fangio was fired, no caption, just, get the F out of here. And you see what Vic does on a team that's no nonsense, tackling in the back end, tough Philly mentality. I want that on defense. I don't want the flash, S-word soft that Miami has. So that kind of rubbed me wrong with Holland, but he's obviously extremely talented, only 24 years old. But there's a number of other good safeties out there. with how much cover 1 and cover 3 the Broncos play, if they're not worried about the injury history, or maybe you can get him for a 1-year deal. But Hufanga, because they're not really playing as much split safety stuff, he's really good at that strong safety coming down hill. I think that I also really like Reed. He's going to only, you pointed out, I thought Reed was older than this. He must have come into the league really young, but he's going to be a third contract guy. And he's been to the Chiefs for a bit, but he's a heck of a tackler, smart player as well. I would love to pair that. I just give me smart players who tackle on the back end, and I'm going to be really happy. And then another, you talked about Raiders having a defensive guy who stood out. I thought Morrig had a pretty good season this year as well. Now, granted, some of it is covering up for Spillane and maybe some of the cornerback issues there. But as far as the run stops, the tackling, like the alley play that he has, very aggressive coming downhill. And I think in the last 2 seasons, he's been like top 10 in balls defensed as well. Still really young. Was a top of the 2nd round player as well, I believe. So he's got a draft profile and pedigree as well. So there's some good safeties. I really like Morrig. Personally, I think ESPN has him like as the 12th best free agent. And again, 24 years old, 2nd contract. Hopefully that's somebody you can get into.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched him, you see that really good run defense, but I don't see it in coverage. I see somebody who's more of a liability. I think he's very similar to PJ Locke in terms of what you're going to get in coverage. But he is a better run defender. And if that's what you're looking for, then I'll take that. Hufanga, I think, is a little too similar to Brendan Jones with how they're using Brendan Jones. And the sense that I get when, I read the reports about them wanting to upgrade safety, they're wanting somebody with a little bit more range, somebody with a little bit more coverage ability on the back end, which is why I lean Javon Holland because, he didn't have the best year this year, but he did have some really good years working in coverage. And he brought up the whole thing with Vic Fangio and him. And I'm just curious here. Did you have the same kind of, energy with Justin Simmons? Because it was reported that Justin Simmons started calling his own plays under Fangio on defense because he didn't trust Fangio to call plays.
I didn't know that about Simmons. And no, I didn't have that same energy with Simmons because he already, he was here and he had skins on the wall. Where Javon Holland, you're making that big investment, somebody else coming in here. I really like the direction of the culture in Denver right now. Obviously, the locker room culture was not the best. Simmons is a great guy, but with Fangio and stuff, it didn't feel like we were all pulling the same direction like this team is right now. So again, I'm not against Holland. I just that petulance, I will call it petulance, that with that post was just like, come on, man. And then to see Vic Fangio go on and lead in fantastic defense, turn it around. I mean, last year the Eagles were pitiful despite all that talent, right? And this season, best tackling defensive backs in football this year, best overall defense. I mean, the talent was there, but you got to have them pull in the same direction. So that makes me a little concerned with Holland. But again, you sit him down, you find out what's going on there. He was only 23 years old at the time. I was doing dumb, what stuff at 23 also. So I'm not going to completely hold against him. It just that left a little bit bad taste in my mouth. And in the best interpretation, it was immature.
Yeah, I get it. I was just curious because I can't remember who it was. I think it was Broncos Country Tonight. I think it was one of those guys or somebody who appeared on the show that first started bringing it up that there was a lot of issues with Vic Fangio, and Justin Simmons started calling his own plays. He didn't trust them, started having issues with Donatel as well. And that was supposedly a big reason for their parting of ways. But the safety that I want, I mean, if you can't get Javon Holland, he's the star of free agency, I guess would be the best way to put it. The top of the group, based on, when you look at a lot of these rankings for free agents. But Justin Reed is the one I would take at, because anytime you can take somebody away from a division rival who's a really good player, I think there's just a little bit extra value to that. Keeps them from, re-signing there and being a danger to your team for 2 games a season, and instead you're turning it and reflecting it. And then all the top of that, the extra information you can get about their familiarity with the schemes, familiarity working and practicing against that offense. That is just extra value that you can't really put a price tag on, so to speak.
Yeah. So we didn't get a chance to get too much into some of the running backs, so to speak, maybe some depth wide receivers. I mean, we'll see what happens, but Allen Lazard, Denver's tried to get him 2 times. If he's released, I wouldn't be shocked if they try to go get him again to play that little Jordan Humphrey role. I really like Ty Johnson out of Buffalo just for a pure receiving back to raise the floor there. He was one of the better receiving backs in football this season. But before we get out of here, we're going to do a quick 5-10 minute mock here, Eric. Not too much time for discussion, but do want to run it, and we're going to run PFF since they're obviously paying you to speak highly about their simulator. Yeah, Bonnie comes in and says Reed and Bill Bolton would be ideal. It'd be great. One thing I also love about that is they come in with instant chemistry and familiarity. And also you weaken the Chiefs at the same time. Is Reed going to want to leave Kansas City and Spagnuolo? That's the one thing I've heard. Like maybe he would take a little bit less to stay there, but we'll see what happens. But running this mock here, let's get it going.
Real quick, there's another name out there talking about a bunch of defensive linemen. Wharton, taking him from the Chiefs. He had a surprisingly good year, went very under the radar with the Chiefs. And Derek Nottie, I mean, if you want to, target a run defender guy, Derek Nottie, just talking about stealing guys from the Chiefs. There's a couple options on the defensive line that you and I are both so coveting for the Broncos to address this offseason.
I mean, Tart is also out there, who is a pretty good one-year contract, nose tackle, glass-eating type for the Chargers along the Puna Ford. So there's DJ Jones is going to walk. He's going to get 10 to 12 million a year. I was surprised to not see him in the top 50 of ESPN's top 50 free agents because what he did this season was very good. Like entering the last year, I was like, he wasn't very good in 2023. This year looked pretty darn good for his role. Somebody's going to want to pay him, especially if you're playing light boxes. His run ability is good. But we're on the clock here with the Broncos at pick 20. We got Ashton Genty here at 20. That seems like the obvious pick, but we can keep it rolling here as well. Michael Williams is interesting. You got Matthew Golden, Gray Zabel, Darius Alexander all the way up to 28. Goodness. There's Loveland at 31. See, Loveland falling to 20 every time. Maybe that seems like his ceiling. And there's Jalen Walker, who, honestly, if the draft fell this way, I'm taking Jalen Walker at 20 because I think he's the best player, the most valuable position. But what do you think? Ashton Genty here? Just roll with it?
Yeah, I think if we don't take him, the people in the chat might come after us. So
we don't need that. Don't need none of that. We're on the clock again with the Broncos here. Jihad Campbell makes a lot of sense here at pick 52. You need a linebacker. I think he's a good fit for how much the Broncos want to blitz. I think he's like a supercharged version of Drew Sanders, who Drew Sanders hasn't met potentially yet. Jihad's got much more coverage fluidity as well. He just looks more natural in space, in my opinion. He stands out. You also got Farmer here. Makes some sense. Defensive line moved way up the board here. 57. I thought he'd be around 3. I like Omar Norman a lot as well. There's Henderson down here. Still Birch. Somebody maybe some inside-outside ability. Chris Paul moved up the board. New board here from PFF. Interesting. I think the obvious answer is Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, and I just got to point out, if you look to the left of it a little bit, Colson Loveland going to pick 50.
Interesting. That's if that happened, we'd trade up. Right. If he fell like we took Genty and then Loveland falls to pick like 45, we're moving up.
Yeah. And that's the thing is too. I mean, I want to mention this earlier. And when I talk about not liking guys, a lot of the times it's reactionary to where they're viewed. So like, I'm not a big fan of Colson Loveland at 20, but if you get to like 30 and he's still there, that's to me is about the peak of him, where I'd be, think it was where you start to find value for him. So, you get to 40, 45. Yeah, I'd be willing to trade up for him. Gunnar Helms as well. I'd see a lot of top 50 talk for him. I'm more of a, 64 to 80 type range for him.
Well, right now you got a chance to put your money where your mouth is, Eric. We're on the pick at 84 here. You got all these tight ends. Gunnar Helm is available. Elijah Arroyo is available. Mason Taylor's available. Harold Fannin, a little bit more H-back, but he's available too. Best guy's got to be Arroyo, right? Arroyo here is just too good.
He's my top tight end. He's the one that I mentioned earlier that it might take tight end 2 away from Colson Loveland.
Well, there you go. So far we have gone. God, I thought. Oh, here it is. Your picks: H-back, halfback Genty, linebacker Campbell, Elijah Arroyo. So we need some defensive line here or wide receiver, or we could double up on running back and tight end as well. Running back, I think maybe not as necessary after that move. So you got Terrence Ferguson, Savion Williams is interesting. We already went linebacker, but Kaiser's interesting. You got your Rashard Smith is interesting here. Riley Mills, an interesting player. I think he's a good fit. Ola, linebacker to edge rusher, a dominant player in the Senior Bowl. A really awesome player as well. Billy Bowman at safety makes some sense here. Those I don't really love the board here right now. I wish there was a defensive lineman I liked more. Typically there is. Maybe they're grading somebody too low that would be of interest for us here.
Ooh,
no, my favorite guys are gone. That's a bummer. Okay, well, I'm okay with Riley Mills. What'd you say?
Tim Smith is there though.
You like Tim Smith in 4? You like him this high?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I didn't like him that much in his profile. I thought he was more like 5th, 6th round body type. You like him more than Mills. You're talking your 4-eye, 5 technique. Mills is a leader on the team. I've seen some people compare him to Zach Allen coming out as well. You'd rather go Tim Smith, though, here?
I'm familiar with Tim Smith. I'm not familiar with Mills, to be honest.
Okay. We'll go Smith on this one just because we got to keep the ball rolling. I think it's a little high for him, but man, you really had a run on defensive line there. So typically you had some good options there in the 4th round and not in this one. All right, I'm going to take the wheel on this one. I'm going to take Jalen Conyers. I know that you don't like him as much, but 6th round with his profile, gimme. We're up again for the Broncos. Miles Frazier, good player.
Can we see interior offensive lineman? Because there's one guy here. I don't think he's here. Typically with the PFF board, he's gone by now. Yeah, he'd be there. Willie Lampkin. I mean, this dude is so interesting to me at 5'11", 270-pound center, and just the way he plays. He is so interesting to me, and that 5th, 6th round range that I would be very excited if he was here. But I would be looking at somebody at safeties. Hunter Wohler, he's a guy who I think could be gone at this point.
Yep.
So I like him here.
And then we're on the board again. We already took 2 tight ends, so we're not looking that way. Looking for special teams potentially here as well. Marks, good pass catcher out of the backfield. Let's see who is here still at running back. I want to see if Blue is still on the board. Rocket Sanders, interesting. Donovan Edwards, cover athlete there, Eric. I like Keandrin Lambert-Smith. Honestly, Scott likes him a lot. You're just depth here, 6th round. I'm fine with it. So let's go with that one.
Okay.
So there we go. We earned a new award. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So the one pick they didn't like was Tim Smith. Didn't like Wohler as well, but that's a good pick. Yeah. Man, I feel like we have a good chance at a defensive lineman there in the 4th round. That just did not fall that way in this one. So that kind of bums me out a little bit, but is what it is. We got Coach Chris coming here as we wrap up the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in there. We got to run in a mock. We got to fly here. Love the show. Welcome, Eric. Love your insights. What are your thoughts on positions we'll address in free agency so we can focus on the draft? Any high-level free agents you think we're favored to go get Denver and actually materialize? Coach, you must have got here late because that was the entire show. Give us the synopsis here, though, Eric. I think it was linebacker, safety, the big 2.
Yeah, I mean, I really expect Denver, as long as he doesn't re-sign with Philadelphia before then, I really expect Denver to be making a full court press to bring in a basketball reference for Zach Bond. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a hard look at Javon Holland, Justin Reed, one of those guys. And then I think for them and that 2nd tier might be the Raiders safety whose name escaped Morig. I think he might be part of that 2nd tier for them.
Cisco. Then, also, if you talked about Brandon Jones, I think Cisco pairs well more as that free safety to Jones being your strong safety matchup type.
Yeah, but I still think that they want somebody who could be, decent enough as a run defender, and that is not Cisco.
It is not. It is not. Yep. And Todd also says, how do you adjust safety and who? Just went through it there. I think safety, linebacker, defense, every single one of the Broncos' needs on this team are, I mean, gosh, I view the draft so holistically. Like, free agency shouldn't really impact your draft plans, right? Because you're drafting at some point in the offseason. We'll go back and kind of grade the drafts and like, wow, it took 2.5 seasons or 1.5 seasons before this guy really came to fruition. And over a 1 to 2 to 3 year sample, if you don't water your plants, everything can become a need. Weeds can take over. So as far as the draft, I think you just got to trust your board and bring in good players. Obviously, there is like some areas where the path to playing time is not so obvious. Like, would it be great for Denver to bring in a developmental offensive tackle? Yes. You are kind of blocked there the next 2 seasons, and that's a premium position. I don't know if it's like worth taking a 6th round offensive tackle. Like, what are the actual odds of having a body type and athlete that falls that far? Just pretty rare. So I don't know. We'll see. Got to wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We talked a lot about free agents. Shout out to all of our super chats folks today. Michael Ronquillo, Denver Luke, Mark Schrader, Duke Rose, Shiloh coming in here, Keith Brugman, Todd, of course, and Coach Chris with the orange, flashing us with orange. We always love that. Also, if you guys can't be like those super chat givers, make sure you click the thumbs up on the way in or the way out, all that stuff. It's great. Follow Eric and I on X/Twitter, whatever the heck you want to call it. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Eric's at Erick Trickel, not Gordon Trickel. Also, we got follow us at Mile High Huddle over on Twitter as well. If you haven't done so yet, we're over at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, main way you can watch us is YouTube. Of course, most of the super chats in here, sometimes the Facebook link is wonky as well. You guys watch us wherever you want. Appreciate it always. But YouTube is probably the number one place, the biggest community for us. So please make sure you're going over to YouTube, subscribing to our show, liking this specific show as well, and sharing on your social media platforms. And also, shout out to Coach Chris, battling kidney stones. I don't want to share too much, but Eric is a veteran in the Coliseum that is kidney stones. So, my God, no fun. Good luck. God, I don't know. Words of wisdom here, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for you. It stinks. I've dealt with my fair share of them, and wishing you nothing but the best, and hoping that you either pass them soon or get them taken care of surgically soon, because that is a pain that is not fun to deal with.
No.
So,
yep. And Jeremy says, start with the mock. Well, mock draft Mondays are going to be more flushed out mock talk. Today was just, fun. So, and I'm going to get a mock out there today. I'm going to write it today. Chad will have it out tomorrow. So we're going to, hopefully, you guys are starting to get used to it here, but I'm releasing a 3-round mock that comes out on Thursday. Eric's releasing a 7-round mock that comes out on Monday. So, and guess what? It's not going to be Colston Loveland at 20 every time, even though it's a fine pick. Even at some point, I will put Colston Loveland at 20, but not every single mock, because we still have over 50 days left. We need some variety here, right? We don't need to be monogamous with our 20th overall pick. So appreciate everyone coming in here. Have a good one. I got to fly. Continue to choose kindness, compassion. We'll see you guys again on Monday. Go Broncos.